Born on the streets, she learned to listen to engines as if deciphering secrets. One day, a millionaire challenged her to fix a car that no one else could save. There was sabotage behind the failures, and someone inside the millionaire's own company was the traitor. If you were touched by this beautiful story of resilience and love, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Continuing. In the harsh winters of Detroit, Michigan, where the automotive industry once reigned supreme, 12-year-old Riley Jenkins had learned to survive on streets that had long forgotten their glory days. Born to a mother she never knew, and abandoned before she could form memories, Riley had grown up in the shadows of America's Motor City, a child of concrete sidewalks and vacant lots. Detroit's skeleton of abandoned factories and foreclosed homes had become her playground, her school, and her sanctuary. Unlike other children who feared the night, Riley embraced it. The darkness provided safety, a cloak that made her invisible to those who might harm her or, worse, report her to social services. She'd escaped the system 3 times already and had no intention of being caught again. What separated Riley from other homeless children wasn't her unusual height for her age or the perpetual smudge of grease on her freckled face. It was her extraordinary gift, an almost supernatural ability to understand machines, particularly car engines. She could diagnose automotive problems simply by listening to them, like a musician who could identify a misplayed note in a symphony. Morning. "Hold, friend," Riley whispered, as she emerged from her temporary shelter beneath an overpass. Her fingers traced the cold metal of a discarded muffler she'd salvaged weeks ago. From others' trash, she created tools and treasures. A bent license plate became a crude knife. Discarded aluminum cans transformed into containers for collecting. Rainwater. Her ingenuity wasn't taught. It was born from necessity and honed through survival. Riley's stomach growled, a familiar companion that had been with her since she could remember. She patted her worn backpack, checking the meager supplies inside. Half a sandwich from yesterday's dumpster dive behind Sullivan's Diner, a plastic water bottle, and her most prized possession, a multi-tool she'd found abandoned in Murphy's salvage yard. Today was Tuesday, which meant Jackson's auto shop would be receiving parts. The delivery guy always came at 8, and Mr. Jackson always went for coffee at the corner store afterward, leaving the back door unattended for precisely 7 minutes. It was all the time Riley needed to slip inside and hide behind the stack of tires in the corner. The shop was Riley's unofficial school. For the past year, she'd been watching, learning, absorbing everything she could about cars. She had memorized the names of tools, understood the function of each engine component, and could predict Mr. Jackson's diagnosis before he spoke it aloud to his customers. "Timing belts shot," she would whisper from her hiding spot as Mr. Jackson examined a sputtering Honda. "Alternator's fine, it's the battery terminals," she would silently correct when he misdiagnosed a Ford pickup. She was never wrong. The bell above Jackson's door jingled as Riley observed from her hiding place, breathing in the comforting smells of motor oil and rubber. Mr. Jackson was working on a Chevy Malibu, his experienced hands moving confidently through the engine compartment. "I'm telling you, Frank, it sounds like it's running on 3 cylinders instead of 4, the customer explained, frustration evident in his voice. "Mister," Jackson nodded, wiping his hands on a rag. "Let me take another listen." As the engine roared to life, Riley closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over her. Immediately, she identified the problem. Cylinder 3 had low compression, a head gasket issue. She could hear the uneven combustion, the slight whistle of escaping pressure. Mr. Jackson scratched his head after listening. "Could be the spark plugs. Let me check those first." Riley wanted to scream out the correct diagnosis but bit her tongue. Revealing herself meant being thrown out or worse, reported. So she watched in silence as Mr. Jackson worked through his checklist, methodically eliminating possibilities, until 40 minutes later he arrived at the conclusion Riley had reached, in seconds. That evening, as the late autumn sun cast long shadows across Detroit's emptying streets, Riley made her way toward Riverside Park. She had developed routes throughout the city that minimized her exposure to police or well-meaning citizens who might question why a young girl was wandering alone. She knew which alleys provided shortcuts, which neighborhoods were safe, and which areas to avoid after dark. Her destination was a particular bench overlooking the Detroit River. From there, she could see Windsor, Canada on the opposite shore, lights twinkling like the life she imagined normal people lived. Sometimes she would sit for hours, inventing stories about the families in those distant homes. In her imagination, they ate dinner together at tables with matching plates. They had beds with clean sheets and bathrooms with hot water that flowed, at the turn of a knob. But tonight, Riley's attention was drawn to something closer. Through the chain-link fence separating the park from Jefferson Avenue, she spotted a sleek building with massive glass windows illuminated from within. The sign read, "Prestige Motors," and inside, like jewels on display, sat the most beautiful cars Riley had ever seen. One vehicle in particular captured her attention, a Ferrari 488 GTB in a shade of red so vibrant it seemed alive. The curves of its body, the aggressive stance, the promise of raw power barely contained beneath its hood. Riley was transfixed. She slipped through a gap in the fence and approached the dealership, pressed her face against the cold glass and imagined the sound its engine would make, a perfect harmony of precision engineering and controlled fury. "Like what you see, kid?" The voice startled her. Riley spun around, ready to run, her body tensed for escape. A security guard stood a few feet away, his expression more curious than threatening. "I was just looking," Riley mumbled, already calculating which direction offered the best escape route. "That's $250,000 of Italian engineering," the guard said, nodding toward the Ferrari. "Not exactly a starter car." Riley relaxed slightly. The man didn't seem interested in chasing her away immediately. "It has a 3.9-liter twin-turbocharged V8, she said, the specifications flowing from her memory. "Can go from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds flat, 7-speed dual-clutch transmission." The guard's eyebrows shot up. "You know your cars." Riley shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention but unable to hide her passion. "I like engines. The sound they make when they're running right, it's like music." "You should come back tomorrow," the guard suggested. "The owner, Mr. Thompson, is hosting an event. There'll be even more impressive cars than this one." Riley nodded non-committally, though they both knew she wouldn't be invited to any event at a place like Prestige Motors. As the guard continued his rounds, Riley took one last look at the Ferrari before slipping back through the fence. That night, curled up in her hidden spot beneath a tarp near the river, Riley couldn't stop thinking about the red Ferrari. In her dreams, she wasn't just looking at it through glass. She was beneath its hood, her hands dancing across the engine components, understanding each piece as if it was speaking to her in a language only she could comprehend. What Riley couldn't know was that fate was about to offer her an opportunity that would forever change her life, beginning with her return to Prestige Motors. The passion that had kept her alive on Detroit's unforgiving streets was about to open a door she never imagined possible, and behind that door waited not just survival, but a chance to truly live. The following morning brought a crisp November chill to Detroit. Riley woke before dawn, her breath visible in the cold air. The promise of the security guard lingered in her mind. More luxury cars would be on display today. Despite knowing she didn't belong in that world, something pulled her toward Prestige Motors. Riley spent the early hours of the morning, as she always did, searching for breakfast. Behind Westside Bakery, the owner sometimes left day-old pastries in a separate bag. It wasn't charity. Mr. Peterson simply believed in reducing waste. Riley never took more than she needed, understanding that others like her relied on this small kindness too. Today yielded a slightly stale cinnamon roll and a blueberry muffin. She savored each bite, walking toward the public library where she could wash up in the bathroom and spend a few hours in warmth before the librarians became suspicious of an unaccompanied minor. By afternoon, Riley found herself drawn back to Prestige Motors. The dealership buzzed with activity. Men in expensive suits and women in elegant dresses moved between display vehicles, champagne flutes in hand. Through the windows, Riley could see that the showroom had been transformed. Red carpets covered the floor, and additional luxury cars had been brought in for the event. The Ferrari that had captivated her attention yesterday remained the centerpiece, its red paint gleaming under strategically placed spotlights. Riley stayed across the street, watching from a distance, knowing that her worn jeans, faded Detroit Tigers hoodie, and scuffed sneakers would immediately mark her as an outsider. "You came back," a voice said behind her. Riley turned to find the security guard from yesterday, now dressed in a more formal uniform. "Just looking," she replied cautiously. The guard studied her for a moment. "You really like cars, don't you?" Riley nodded, her eyes drifting back to the showroom. "What? If I told you I could get you?" "Inside," he offered. Riley's heart jumped, but skepticism quickly followed. "Why would you do that?" "Because you knew more about that Ferrari than most of the people in there buying them," he said with a shrug. "I'm Marcus, by the way." "Riley," she responded, still hesitant. Marcus gestured toward the back of the building. "There's a service entrance. I can let you in, but you'll need to stay out of sight. Just watch, don't touch anything, and leave when I tell you to. Deal?" It was too tempting to refuse. Riley nodded, following Marcus around the corner to a service door. He swiped his keycard and the heavy metal door swung open. "The event's mostly in the main showroom. If anyone asks, you're my niece waiting for me to finish my shift," Marcus instructed. Riley slipped inside, immediately enveloped by the controlled climate of the building, a stark contrast to the November chill outside. Marcus led her through a hallway that opened into a massive service area. Unlike the public showroom, this space was purely functional: concrete floors, fluorescent lighting, and several vehicles in various stages of maintenance. "Wait here," Marcus said, pointing to a corner partially hidden by a tool cabinet. "I need to get back to my post, but you can see most of the action from here." After Marcus left, Riley's attention was drawn to the mechanics working on the luxury vehicles. Their movements were precise, their tools expensive and specialized. This was nothing like Jackson's auto shop. Here computers diagnosed problems, digital readouts provided exact measurements, and the mechanics wore crisp uniforms instead of oil-stained coveralls. Riley was so absorbed in watching a technician calibrate a Bentley's suspension system that she didn't notice the commotion developing in another part of the service area, until raised voices broke her concentration. "This is unacceptable, Phillips. The senator arrives tomorrow and his car isn't ready." A tall man in an impeccably tailored suit was berating a mechanic who stood with his head slightly bowed. "I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson, but we've tried everything. None of us can figure out what's causing the intermittent electrical failure," the mechanic explained. Riley recognized the name, Thompson, the owner Marcus had mentioned. She shrank further into her hiding spot, but her curiosity kept her from leaving. "3 of my best technicians have been working on this for 2 days, Thompson continued, his frustration evident. "The senator specifically requested this car for his stay in Detroit, and I personally guaranteed it would be ready." The subject of their discussion was a midnight blue Aston Martin Rapide. Even from her position, Riley could tell it was a special vehicle: custom wheels, bespoke interior, and modifications that hinted at enhanced performance. "We've replaced the battery, checked all the wiring harnesses, tested the alternator. Everything checks out, but the system still randomly shuts down," Phillips explained. Riley leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as she studied the vehicle. The symptoms sounded familiar. At Jackson's shop, she'd once observed a similar problem with a much less expensive car. The issue had been an overlooked ground wire connection that had become corroded, creating an intermittent electrical fault that was maddening to diagnose. Without thinking, Riley emerged from her hiding place and approached the group. "Have you checked the secondary ground connection at the rear of the engine compartment?" Every head turned toward her. The silence that followed was deafening. "Who the hell are you, and how did you get in here?" Thompson demanded, his face flushing with anger. Before Riley could answer, Marcus appeared, his expression a mixture of alarm and apology. "Sir, I'm sorry, she's my—" "I can fix it," Riley interrupted, her voice surprisingly steady despite her racing heart. "The problem you're describing, I've seen it before." Thompson's anger gave way to disbelief. He looked at the dirty, undersized girl standing before him, then at the $200,000 custom Aston Martin. "Is this some kind of joke?" he asked, looking at Marcus. "Sir, Marcus began, but Thompson raised a hand to silence him. "What's your name?" Thompson asked Riley directly. "Riley Jenkins." "And why should I believe you can fix a problem my team of certified technicians can't solve?" Riley met his gaze. "Because I understand engines. I can hear when something's wrong, like how a musician can hear when a note is off-key." A woman stepped forward from the small crowd that had gathered. She wore a designer dress and carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to authority. "Let her try, Victor," she said to Thompson. "What's the harm?" Thompson considered this for a moment, then a calculating smile spread across his face. He turned to the gathered employees and the few guests who had wandered into the service area, attracted by the commotion. "Ladies and gentlemen, it seems we have an unexpected addition to our event today," he announced, his voice taking on the quality of a showman. "This young lady claims she can solve a problem that has stumped our expert technicians." Riley felt all eyes on her, and her confidence wavered. She hadn't intended to become a spectacle. "How about we make this interesting?" Thompson continued. "If you can fix the senator's car, I'll give you He paused, considering. $5,000. If you can't, well, you'll have provided some entertainment for our guests." The crowd murmured with interest. Riley swallowed. Hard, her mouth suddenly dry. $5,000 was more money than she could imagine. It could mean real food, warm clothes for winter, maybe even a small room somewhere. "Deal," she said, pushing down her fear. Phillips, the head mechanic, looked skeptical but handed Riley a pair of gloves. "The diagnostic computer is over there," he said, gesturing to a sophisticated setup connected to the car. Riley nodded, but didn't move toward the computer. Instead, she asked, "Can you start the engine?" Phillips slid into the driver's seat and turned the key. The Aston Martin's V12 engine roared to life, its rumble reverberating through the service bay. Riley closed her eyes and listened. Beyond the perfect purr of the engine, beyond the typical mechanical sounds, she detected something, a faint, irregular clicking that most would miss. She opened her eyes and moved to the open hood. "Can you rev it to about 3,000 RPM and hold it there?" Phillips complied, and the engine's pitch increased. Riley leaned closer, her head almost inside the engine compartment, focusing entirely on the sound. "Cut it," she said after a minute. As the engine quieted, Riley turned to Thompson. "Right, I need tools, and I need everyone to step back and give me space." To her surprise, Thompson nodded to Phillips, who wheeled over a toolbox. The crowd moved back, forming a semicircle around the car. Thompson checked his watch, then looked at Riley. "You have 1 hour." Riley took a deep breath and turned to the Aston Martin. This was her moment, a chance to change everything. As she selected a wrench from the toolbox, her hands steadied. The engine was calling to her, telling her its secrets, guiding her toward the hidden flaw that had eluded everyone else, and she was ready to listen. The service bay fell silent as Riley began her work. The assembled crowd of wealthy patrons and dealership employees watched with expressions ranging from amusement to skepticism as the small, disheveled girl methodically examined the Aston Martin's engine compartment. Riley moved with surprising confidence. This wasn't the first time she'd been underestimated, though it was certainly the first time she'd had an audience. She focused on blocking out the whispers and stares, concentrating only on the car before her. "Can I see the maintenance history?" she asked without looking up. Phillips, still visibly uncomfortable with the situation, handed her a tablet. "Everything's logged here. The car came in for its regular service last month, and then again 2 days ago when the senator's assistant reported the electrical issues." Riley scrolled through the digital records, her eyes narrowing as she spotted something unusual. "It says here you replaced the central ECU module last service. Why?" Phillips hesitated. "The senator's assistant requested it. Said the senator wanted all electronic components updated to the latest versions. But there was nothing wrong with the original unit?" "No," Phillips admitted. "It was functioning perfectly." Riley handed the tablet back and returned her attention to the engine. Her small fingers traced wiring connections that led from the battery to various components. Unlike the other mechanics who had relied on sophisticated diagnostic equipment, Riley was using her most valuable tools, her eyes, ears, and intuition. Methodically, she began disconnecting and reconnecting electrical connections, testing the resistance on various circuits with a multimeter. After 20 minutes of silent work, she paused at a particular junction near the firewall, the barrier separating the engine compartment from the passenger cabin. "I need to check something." "Inside the dashboard," she announced. Thompson, who had been watching with growing impatience, gestured for Phillips to assist her. The mechanic helped Riley access the panel beneath the steering column, removing several screws to expose a complex array of wiring and electronic modules. Riley lay across the driver's seat, her upper body disappearing under the dashboard. After a few minutes of careful examination, she emerged with a look of concentration. "I need a flashlight and some needle-nose pliers," she requested. As Phillips handed her the tools, Thompson checked his watch again. 30 minutes left, he announced loudly, drawing murmurs from the crowd. Riley ignored the pressure and returned to her position under the dashboard, with the flashlight clenched between her teeth. She maneuvered the pliers into a tight space near the steering column. After some delicate manipulation, she extracted something and sat up. In her palm lay a small black device, about the size of a quarter. "What is that?" Thompson demanded, leaning in for a closer look. "It's not a factory part," Riley said quietly, examining the device. "Someone installed this to create an intermittent fault in the electrical system." Phillips took the device from her, turning it over in his hands with a puzzled expression. "I've never seen anything like this before." "That's because it doesn't belong in a car," Riley explained. "It's designed to randomly interrupt the connection between the ECU and the car's electrical systems. That's why your diagnostics couldn't pinpoint the problem, because technically there wasn't one. This was deliberately creating the symptoms." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Thompson's face had gone from skeptical to intensely interested. "Are you saying someone sabotaged the senator's car?" he asked, his voice low. Riley shook her head. "Not exactly sabotage, more like a trick. The device doesn't damage anything. It just makes the car behave erratically, and I don't think it was meant for the senator." "What do you mean?" Thompson pressed. "The device was installed after the ECU replacement," Riley explained, "but according to the maintenance records, the car hasn't been back to the dealership since then. So either someone here installed it." She let the implication hang in the air. Thompson's expression hardened. He turned to Phillips. "Who had access to this vehicle after the ECU replacement?" Phillips looked uncomfortable. "The car was delivered directly to the senator's residence in Grosse Pointe. His personal staff would have had access, and it was returned to us 2 days ago by his assistant when the problem started." Thompson seemed to be processing this information when the woman who had earlier encouraged him to let Riley try stepped forward. Riley now noticed the name badge on her designer dress, Catherine Thompson, Victor's wife apparently. "There's more to this, isn't there?" Catherine asked Riley directly. "You found something else." Riley hesitated, then nodded. "The ECU that was installed last month, it's not the model listed in your records." "What?" Phillips exclaimed. "That's impossible. I oversaw the installation myself." "May I?" Riley asked, gesturing toward the open hood. Phillips nodded, his face now pale. Riley led the group back to the engine compartment and pointed to the ECU module, the car's electronic brain. "This is a ZT950 model. Your records show you installed a ZT980. "They look identical," Phillips protested. "Almost," Riley agreed, "but the ZT950 has a different serial number format, and if you look closely at the casing," she pointed to a nearly imperceptible seam. "This has been opened and resealed." Thompson was now fully engaged, his earlier condescension replaced by intense focus. "What are you suggesting?" "I think someone switched the ECU you installed with this older model, then added the device I found to create electrical problems as a distraction. The real issue isn't the intermittent power failure, it's what's inside this modified ECU." A tense silence fell over the service bay. The socialites and wealthy car enthusiasts who had gathered to watch the spectacle were now witnessing something entirely unexpected. "Phillips, remove that ECU immediately," Thompson ordered. As the mechanic carefully disconnected and removed the module, Catherine turned to Riley. "How did you know to look for this? Most mechanics would have focused solely on the electrical symptoms." Riley shrugged. "The sounds weren't right. When I listened to the engine, the timing of the electrical failures didn't match any pattern I've heard before. It was too deliberate. And then I noticed tool marks on some of the connectors that looked fresher than they should have been." Phillips handed the removed ECU to Thompson, who examined it with newfound suspicion. "We need to open this," he said. In moments they had moved to a workbench where Phillips carefully opened the sealed casing of the ECU. Inside, nestled among the expected circuit boards and components, was something unexpected. A small device, with its own battery and a tiny antenna. "What the hell is that?" Thompson demanded. Riley leaned in for a closer look. "It looks like some kind of transmitter." Catherine's expression darkened. Someone was tracking the senator's car, or worse, listening in. Thompson turned to his security team. "I want the entire dealership locked down. No one leaves until we get to the bottom of this." As the service bay erupted into controlled chaos, Riley stood back, suddenly aware that she had uncovered something far more significant than a simple mechanical problem. This wasn't just about fixing a car anymore. It was about exposing what appeared to be a sophisticated operation targeting a high-profile individual. In the midst of the commotion, Riley felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Catherine Thompson. Her expression a mixture of concern and admiration. "You have an extraordinary gift," she said quietly. "But I'm afraid you've just stepped into something very complicated." Riley nodded, her earlier confidence giving way to uncertainty. "I just wanted to fix the car." "And you did," Catherine assured her. "But you also uncovered something others wanted to keep hidden. That makes you valuable and potentially at risk." Before Riley could respond, Victor Thompson rejoined them, his phone in hand. "I've just spoken with the Senator's Chief of Staff. They're sending a security team to collect the device and the modified ECU." He turned to Riley, studying her with new eyes. "It seems I underestimated you, Miss Jenkins." "Does this mean I get the $5,000? Riley asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Thompson actually laughed. "Yes, you've certainly earned it, but I think we need to have a longer conversation about your future." "My future?" Riley echoed, confused. Catherine stepped in. "Victor means you have an extraordinary talent that shouldn't go to waste. Perhaps we can help with that." Riley's mind spun with possibilities. After years of surviving day to day, the concept of a future seemed almost foreign. Before she could respond, Phillips approached with the Aston Martin's key. "I've reinstalled the proper ECU and removed the disruptor device," he reported. "Would you like to verify the fix?" Thompson handed the key to Riley. "I believe you've earned the right to do the honors." With trembling hands, Riley took the key and slid into the driver's seat of the Aston Martin. The leather was softer than anything she'd ever touched, the cabin smelling of expensive materials and subtle cologne. She inserted the key and pressed the start button. The engine roared to life, its sound pure and perfect, no irregularities, no hesitations. Riley closed her eyes and listened, a smile spreading across her face. This was what an engine should sound like. When she opened her eyes, she found Thompson watching her through the windshield, his expression thoughtful. Riley knew that something fundamental had changed. She had entered Prestige Motors as an invisible street kid, but whatever happened next, she wouldn't be leaving as one. The question was, what exactly had she gotten herself into? The following morning, Riley woke in a hotel room larger than any space she'd ever called her own. After the events at Prestige Motors, Catherine Thompson had insisted that Riley couldn't return to the streets. Despite Riley's protests and ingrained wariness of adults offering help, Catherine had been persuasive. "Just for a few days," Catherine had said, "until we figure things out." Now, lying in a queen-sized bed at the Detroit Riverfront Hotel, Riley stared at the ceiling, processing the dramatic turn her life had taken in less than 24 hours. On the nightstand sat an envelope containing $5,000 in cash, payment for solving the Aston Martin mystery, more money than she'd ever seen, let alone possessed. A gentle knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Riley, are you awake?" Catherine's voice called from the hallway. Riley quickly dressed in the new clothes Catherine had purchased for her the previous evening, jeans that actually fit, a deep blue sweater, and boots that didn't have holes in the soles. The transformation, when she looked in the mirror, was startling. Without the layer of Detroit grime, with her auburn hair washed and brushed, she almost didn't recognize herself. Catherine was waiting in the hallway, elegant as ever, in a tailored pantsuit. "Good morning. I hope you slept well?" Riley nodded, still uncomfortable with the attention. "Yes, Mom, thank you." "Please call me Catherine," she insisted with a warm smile. "Victor is waiting for us downstairs. There have been some developments regarding yesterday's discovery. In the hotel restaurant, Victor Thompson sat at a corner table with two other men. One wore a dark suit that screamed government, while the other was dressed more casually, but carried himself with unmistakable authority. "Riley, I'd like you to meet Special Agent Donovan from the FBI," Thompson introduced the suited man. "And this is Sam Wells, the Senator's head of security." Riley tensed. Law enforcement meant questions about her background, her lack of guardianship, her years of existing off the grid, as, if sensing her anxiety, Catherine placed a reassuring hand on Riley's shoulder. "They're not here about you, Riley. They're here about what you found." Agent Donovan leaned forward. "Miss Jenkins, what you discovered yesterday may be connected to a larger case we've been investigating. I understand you have a unique ability when it comes to vehicles." Riley shifted uncomfortably. "I just understand how they work. I can hear when something's wrong." "And yesterday you heard something wrong with the Senator's Aston Martin," Wells interjected. "Something that our regular security checks missed completely." "The device you found is sophisticated surveillance equipment," Donovan explained, "not something a typical car thief or vandal would have access to. We believe it may be connected to several similar incidents involving high-profile individuals across the country." Thompson cleared his throat. "Which brings us to the reason for this meeting. After you left yesterday, we discovered 2 more vehicles in our service department with similar modifications." Riley's eyes widened. "More tracking devices." "Not exactly the same, but similar tampering," Thompson explained. "Different vehicles, different clients, but all serviced within the last 3 months. All high-end models belonging to prominent people." "Politicians?" Riley asked. "One belongs to the CEO of Detroit Electric, and the other to a federal judge," Catherine answered. "The common thread is that all these vehicles were serviced at our dealership." The implication hung heavily in the air. Someone at Prestige Motors was involved. "We need your help, Riley," Thompson said directly. "Your ability to detect these modifications could be invaluable. We need to check every vehicle that's passed through our service department in the last 6 months, but discreetly. We can't tip off whoever is doing this." Riley considered the request. Despite the comfortable hotel room and new clothes, she remained innately cautious. Years of street survival had taught her that nothing came without strings attached. "What's in it for me?" she asked bluntly. Rather than appearing offended, Thompson seemed to respect her directness. "Fair question. Beyond the payment you've already received, I'm prepared to offer you a position at Prestige, a legitimate job with a salary, training, and benefits, regardless of the outcome of this investigation." Riley's heart raced at the prospect, but she kept her expression neutral. "And what about my situation? I don't exactly have a work permit or ID." Catherine stepped in. "We have connections with social services. We can help regularize your status, find appropriate guardianship." Seeing Riley's expression darken, she quickly added, "Not a traditional foster home. Perhaps something more like an apprenticeship arrangement. You'd have independence but also support." It sounded too good to be true, which in Riley's experience meant it probably was. Yet the opportunity being presented was beyond anything she'd ever dared to hope for. "I'll need to think about it," she said finally. "Of course," Thompson agreed. "But we need to move quickly on checking the vehicles. Perhaps you could help us with that while you consider the larger offer." Riley nodded slowly. "I can do that. Excellent, Thompson said, standing. Let's head to the dealership. We've closed it for a private event today, so we can work without interruption. At Prestige Motors, the showroom had been transformed from the previous day's glamorous event back to its normal, pristine state. The service area, however, was unusually quiet, with only a handful of trusted mechanics present. Phillips approached. As they entered, his demeanor toward Riley noticeably changed from the previous day's skepticism to something approaching respect. "We've pulled the first batch of vehicles," he reported, "all serviced within the last month, prioritizing those belonging to high-profile clients." Thompson turned to Riley. "Where do you want to start?" For the next several hours, Riley methodically examined each vehicle, using a combination of careful visual inspection and her extraordinary auditory perception. Her process was fascinating to watch. She would first listen to each engine, eyes closed in concentration, before moving on to a detailed examination of specific components. By mid-afternoon, she had checked 12 vehicles and found suspicious modifications in 3 of them. One contained a device similar to what she'd found in the senator's car. Another had a modified fuel sensor that seemed designed to cause the vehicle to stall unpredictably. The third had a sophisticated GPS tracker hidden within the navigation system. As Riley worked on the 14th vehicle, a Bentley Bentayga, belonging to a prominent surgeon, she noticed something odd about the pattern of modifications. "These aren't all the same," she observed, looking up at Thompson and Agent Donovan. "They're targeting different systems, different vulnerabilities, but they're all installed with the same technique." "Meaning?" Donovan prompted. "Meaning one person is installing them, but they're using different devices for different purposes," Riley explained, "like they're following specific instructions for each vehicle." Thompson's expression darkened. "So someone in my service department is taking orders from outside." "But who?" Catherine wondered aloud. "And why target such a diverse group of people?" As the day progressed, a pattern began to emerge. The targeted vehicles belonged to individuals from various fields: politics, business, law, medicine, but all were in positions of significant influence or authority. By evening, exhaustion was setting in. Riley had examined 23 vehicles and identified 7 with suspicious modifications. The mood in the service bay was tense as Thompson, Phillips, Agent Donovan, and Wells huddled in discussion. Catherine brought Riley a sandwich and soda from the dealership's break room. "You're doing amazing work," she said, sitting beside Riley on a workbench. "How are you holding up?" Riley shrugged, taking a grateful bite of the sandwich. "I'm okay. It's interesting, actually. Challenging. You know, most kids your age would be overwhelmed by all this," Catherine observed. "I'm not most kids," Riley replied simply. Catherine studied her with genuine curiosity. "No, you certainly aren't. How did you learn so much about cars without any formal training?" Riley hesitated, unused to sharing her past. "I watched, listened, figured things out. When you don't have anything, you pay attention to everything." Before Catherine could respond, their conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the service entrance. One of the mechanics had arrived for his evening shift, looking confused to find the dealership nearly empty. "Eddie, you're not scheduled." "Until tomorrow," Phillips called out, approaching the man. Eddie Miller, a mechanic in his 50s with salt-and-pepper hair and calloused hands, stood awkwardly in the doorway. "I got a text saying my shift was changed, something about a special service job." Thompson and Donovan exchanged glances. Eddie had been with Prestige Motors for over 15 years, one of their most trusted employees. "Who sent the text?" Thompson asked, his voice carefully neutral. Eddie pulled out his phone, showing a message apparently from Phillips. "Right here. Said to come in at 6 instead of tomorrow morning." Phillips examined the message with a frown. "I didn't send this." The tension in the room escalated instantly. Agent Donovan moved closer, his hand instinctively reaching toward his concealed weapon. Eddie looked bewildered. "What's going on? Why is the FBI here?" From her position across the room, Riley observed the mechanic's body language. Unlike the others who seemed suspicious, she noticed something different: genuine confusion mixed with growing fear. "Mr. Thompson," she called out, drawing everyone's attention. "I think someone wanted Eddie to be here tonight. Someone who... I knew we'd be checking the cars." Thompson's eyes narrowed. "You think he's being set up?" "Maybe," Riley said. "Or maybe someone wanted to see if we'd discovered the modifications." Agent Donovan approached Eddie. "Mr. Miller, we need to check your phone. That text message could help us trace whoever is behind this." As the adults focused on Eddie and his phone, Riley's attention was drawn to a vehicle that had just been brought up from the underground storage garage, a matte black Jaguar F-Type with custom wheels. Something about it called to her. While the others were distracted, she walked over and popped the hood. What she found inside made her blood run cold. "Mr. Thompson," she called out, her voice urgent. "I think you need to see this." Thompson. Donovan and Catherine hurried to where Riley stood beside the matte black Jaguar F-Type. The car had been specially ordered by a music producer known for his work with Detroit's top hip-hop artists. Its custom features made it one of the most distinctive vehicles in Prestige's inventory. "What did you find?" Thompson asked, peering under the hood where Riley pointed. "Look at this," Riley directed, indicating a component near the engine control module. "This isn't like the other modifications. It's more sophisticated, better concealed." Agent Donovan leaned in closer. "What does it do?" Riley's expression was grave. "It's connected to the airbag control system. If triggered remotely, it could potentially deploy the airbags while the car is in motion." A shocked silence fell over the group as the implications sank in. This wasn't mere surveillance or mechanical sabotage. This was potentially lethal. "Jesus," Thompson breathed. "When was this vehicle last serviced?" Phillips checked the digital records on his tablet. 3 days ago, routine maintenance before delivery to the client tomorrow." "Who worked on it?" Donovan demanded. Phillips scrolled through the log. "According to this, the primary technician was..." He paused, looking up with disbelief. "Eddie Miller." All eyes turned to Eddie, who had gone pale. "That's not possible," he protested. "I never touched that Jaguar. I was assigned to the European import section all week." "The service log says otherwise," Phillips countered, showing him the screen. "Someone must have used my credentials," Eddie insisted, his voice rising with panic. "I swear I never worked on that car." Riley, who had been quiet during this exchange, spoke up. "He's telling the truth." "How can you be sure?" Donovan asked. "The installation technique is different," Riley explained. "Whoever did the other modifications has a specific way of connecting wires. They twist them clockwise before soldering. This one is different. The wires are crimped, not soldered, and the work is neater, more professional." Catherine gave Riley an appraising look. "You notice that level of detail?" Riley nodded. "Different people have different handwriting when they work. Eddie's work is good, but he tends to use more electrical tape than necessary. This person is minimalist, precise." Eddie looked at Riley with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. "She's right about my style. Ask anyone here." Thompson turned to Phillips. "Check the security footage from the service bay. Let's see who actually worked on this Jaguar." As Phillips left to access the security system, Donovan pulled Thompson and Catherine aside, speaking in low tones while keeping an eye on Eddie. Riley, sensing she wasn't meant to be part of this conversation, stayed by the Jaguar, continuing her examination of the dangerous modification. The component was expertly installed, almost invisible unless you knew exactly what to look for. Unlike the earlier discoveries, which seemed designed to monitor or create inconvenient malfunctions, this one had only one purpose: to cause a potentially catastrophic incident that could be triggered remotely. "The security footage has been tampered with," Phillips announced as he returned. "There's a 4-hour gap in the coverage from Monday afternoon, exactly when this Jaguar would have been serviced." "That settles it," Thompson said grimly. "We have a serious security breach, someone with access to our systems, our vehicles, and apparently able to falsify records." Agent Donovan's phone buzzed. After a brief conversation, he turned to the group. "My team found something on the text sent to Eddie. It wasn't sent from within the dealership network as it appeared. It was routed through a series of proxies, but they've traced it to an external source." Can they identify who sent it? Catherine asked. Not yet, but they're working on it, Donovan replied. What's clear is that someone wanted Eddie here, tonight, either to frame him or to use him as eyes and ears. As the adults debated their next steps, Riley had a realization. Mr. Thompson, she interrupted, who knows we're checking the cars today? Thompson considered the question. Just the people in this room, a few trusted mechanics, and my security team, plus I informed the senator's office and the FBI, of course. So not many people, Riley pressed. But someone knew. Someone wanted to see our reaction when Eddie showed up. Catherine's eyes widened with understanding. They're watching us right now. Agent Donovan immediately began scanning the service bay. Could there be cameras, listening devices? Or someone on the inside, Riley suggested quietly. A tense silence fell over the group as the implications settled. If Riley was right, one of the people they trusted was feeding information to whoever was behind the sabotage. Thompson made a decision. We need to set a trap of our own. Within an hour, a plan had been formulated. They would stage a false discovery, announce they had identified the person responsible for the modifications based on forensic evidence. This would force their adversary to act, potentially revealing themselves. We'll call an emergency staff meeting tomorrow morning, Thompson explained. Announce that we've identified the culprit through microscopic tool marks left on the modified components. Say that the FBI has matched these marks to a specific set of tools belonging to one of our employees. But we haven't actually identified anyone, Phillips pointed out. Exactly, Thompson replied. We're not accusing anyone real. We're creating a fiction to see who reacts. Agent Donovan nodded approvingly. Whoever is behind this will need to warn their accomplice or take steps to cover their tracks. Either way, they'll have to act. And we'll be watching, Catherine added. While the details were being finalized, Riley sat apart from the group, processing everything. The street smart part of her brain, the part that had kept her alive for years, was sending warning signals. She was now involved in something dangerous, something that powerful people wanted to keep hidden. Catherine noticed her withdrawal and came to sit beside her. Having second thoughts? Riley shrugged. Just wondering how I went from trying to get breakfast yesterday to being in the middle of whatever this is, my today. Catherine smiled sympathetically. Life can change in an instant. Sometimes for the worse, sometimes for the better. The question is what we do with those changes. I'm still trying to figure that out, Riley admitted. For what it's worth, Catherine said, I think you're handling this with remarkable composure. Most adults would be overwhelmed. Before Riley could respond, Thompson approached with Agent Donovan. We've finalized the details for tomorrow, Thompson announced. But there's the question of where Riley will stay tonight. After what we've discovered, I don't think the hotel is secure enough. She can stay with us, Catherine suggested immediately. We have plenty of room, and our home security is top-notch. Riley tensed at the proposal. Staying in a hotel was one thing. It was neutral territory. Staying in someone's home was entirely different, far too personal, too vulnerable. Sensing her discomfort, Catherine added, Only if you're comfortable with that, Riley. It's just that our house has a security system and private guards. You'd be safer there. I can take care of myself, Riley responded automatically, a defensive reflex from years of self-reliance. I know you can, Catherine acknowledged, but right now, you might be a target because of what you've discovered. Letting us help protect. You isn't weakness, it's tactical. Riley appreciated Catherine's approach, appealing to logic rather than emotion. After a moment's consideration, she nodded her agreement. The Thompson estate was located in Grosse Pointe Shores, one of Detroit's most exclusive suburbs. As they passed through the ornate iron gates and drove up the winding driveway, Riley stared out the window of Catherine's Mercedes at the sprawling mansion illuminated by tasteful landscape lighting. It was like entering another world, one that until yesterday had existed only in her imagination. Security personnel greeted them at the entrance, and Catherine led Riley through a grand foyer with a chandelier that probably cost more than most houses. Despite her exhaustion, Riley couldn't help but take in every detail of her surroundings, memorizing the layout out of long ingrained habit. Always know your exits. "You must be hungry," Catherine said as they moved through the house. "I'll have Mrs. Reynolds prepare something. Any preferences?" Riley, overwhelmed by the opulence around her, shook her head. "Anything is fine." Catherine showed her to a guest suite larger than any apartment Riley had ever seen. It featured a king-sized bed, a sitting area with plush furniture, a walk-in closet, and a bathroom with both a shower and a soaking tub. "Make yourself at home," Catherine encouraged. "There are new clothes in the closet. I had my assistant pick up some things in your size. The bathroom has everything you should need. Dinner will be ready in about half an hour." After Catherine left, Riley stood motionless in the center of the room, experiencing a strange dissonance. 24 hours ago, she had been preparing to sleep under a tarp by the Detroit River. Now she was in a mansion with a closet full of new clothes and people concerned for her safety. It didn't feel real. In the bathroom, Riley caught her reflection, in the massive mirror. Despite the new clothes and clean hair, she still recognized the wariness in her eyes, the look of someone who had learned early that good things rarely lasted. Part of her wanted to crawl out the window and disappear, back into the familiar streets. At least there she understood the rules, but another part, a part she rarely acknowledged, desperately wanted to believe that this change could be permanent, that her life could be more than daily survival. After a long, hot shower, a luxury she never took for granted, Riley dressed in some of the new clothes, soft cotton pajamas and a warm robe. She made her way downstairs, following the scent of food to a surprisingly casual kitchen area adjacent to the formal dining room. Catherine was already there, having changed into loungewear herself. "I thought we'd eat in here," she said. "The dining room feels too formal when it's just us." As they ate a simple but delicious meal of herb-roasted chicken, vegetables and fresh bread, Catherine told Riley about her background, how she'd grown up in a middle-class family in Ann Arbor, worked her way through college, and built a career in corporate law before meeting Victor. "Victor comes from old money," she explained. "His grandfather started one of the first luxury car dealerships in Detroit back in the 1930s, but I never had any of this growing up. Sometimes I still feel like an outsider in this world." Riley looked up from her plate, surprised by Catherine's candor. "But you fit in so well." Catherine smiled. "Fitting in is a skill you can learn. It doesn't mean you belong." She studied Riley thoughtfully. "I think that's something you understand." Riley nodded slowly. For the first time, she felt a genuine connection with Catherine, a recognition that despite their vastly different circumstances, they shared something fundamental. After dinner, as Riley prepared to return to her room, Catherine's phone rang. Her expression turned serious as she listened to the caller. "That was Victor," she said after hanging up. "There's been a development. The FBI traced the text message sent to Eddie. It came from a phone registered to someone at Prestige Motors." "Who?" Riley asked, suddenly alert. Catherine's answer sent a chill through Riley's body. "Patrick Reynolds, my brother." Riley watched as Catherine's composed facade crumbled at the mention of her brother's name. For a brief moment, the polished, confident woman was replaced by someone vulnerable and shocked. "There must be some mistake," Catherine whispered, more to herself than to Riley. "Patrick wouldn't. He couldn't." "Who is Patrick exactly?" Riley asked carefully. "You mentioned he's your brother, but—" Catherine took a steadying breath. "Patrick is my younger brother. He works in the finance department at Prestige, handling the paperwork for high-end sales and leases. He's been with the company for about 5 years. Victor brought him in as a favor to me when Patrick was struggling to find work after college." She paused, conflict evident in her expression. "But he's always been resentful of Victor's success, of our lifestyle. He feels entitled to more than he's earned." "Does he have access to the service records, the security systems?" Riley pressed. Catherine nodded slowly. "As a finance manager, he has clearance to access most of the dealership's systems. He needs it to verify service histories for valuations and warranties." The implications hung heavy in the air between them. If Patrick was involved, it explained how the service records could be altered, how security footage could be manipulated, How someone could track their investigation. What did Mr. Thompson say they're going to do? Riley asked. They're not arresting him yet, Catherine explained. Victor and Agent Donovan want to proceed with tomorrow's plan. They think if Patrick is involved, the staged announcement might pressure him into revealing his collaborators. Riley considered this. But now that we know about Patrick, isn't the plan compromised? So not necessarily. Victor is keeping this information compartmentalized. Only he, Agent Donovan, and now you and I know about Patrick's possible involvement. The rest of the team still believes we're setting a trap for an unknown suspect. Thought occurred to Riley. Does Patrick know I'm staying here tonight? Catherine's eyes widened slightly. I don't think so. Victor and I agreed not to tell anyone where you were staying, just as a precaution. Relief washed over Riley, followed immediately by a new concern. But if he's working with someone, and they know I identified the modifications, you could be in danger, Catherine finished the thought, her expression hardening with resolve. I need to call Victor again. As Catherine stepped away to make the call, Riley paced the kitchen, her mind racing. The street-honed instinct for self-preservation was screaming at her to run, to disappear back into the familiar anonymity of Detroit's forgotten corners. But running now meant abandoning the first people who had shown genuine faith in her abilities, and possibly leaving them vulnerable to whatever Patrick and his associates were planning. Catherine returned, her face grim. Victor agrees that we need to be extremely careful. He's sending additional security to the house tonight, and he's arranging for unmarked FBI surveillance of Patrick's apartment. What about tomorrow's plan? Riley asked. It's still on but modified. Victor wants you there if you're willing. He thinks your ability to read people might help identify reactions when the announcement is made. Riley hesitated. I'm not sure I'm good at reading people, just engines. Catherine offered a small smile. From what I've seen, you're remarkably perceptive about both. The way you defended Eddie Miller today, the details you notice. You see things others miss. The vote of confidence was unfamiliar territory for Riley. People had rarely expected anything from her beyond staying out of their way. Having someone actually value her judgment was both empowering and terrifying. Okay, she agreed finally. I'll be there. That night, despite the luxurious comfort of her room, Riley slept fitfully. Her dreams were a jumbled mix of engines that screamed in human voices and shadowy figures that pursued her through labyrinthine car dealerships. She woke before dawn, her body still operating on the schedule of someone who needed to be moving, before the city fully awakened. After dressing in some of the new clothes, dark jeans, a navy sweater, and a leather jacket that fit her perfectly, Riley made her way downstairs. To her surprise, Catherine was already in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee and reviewing documents on her tablet. You're up early, Catherine observed, looking up. Always am, Riley replied with a shrug. Hard habit to break. They shared a quiet breakfast, both lost in their own thoughts about the day ahead. As they were finishing, Catherine's phone buzzed with a text. Victor says everything is set for the meeting at 9, she reported. The FBI has surveillance teams in place, and they've been monitoring Patrick all night. Did he do anything? Suspicious, Riley asked. Apparently not. He went straight home after work yesterday and hasn't left his apartment. Catherine looked troubled. Part of me still hopes there's an explanation for all this, that Patrick's phone was stolen or hacked. Riley recognized the hope in Catherine's voice, the desperate need to believe in someone despite evidence to the contrary. It was a luxury Riley had never been able to afford. Sometimes people aren't who we think they are, she said quietly. Catherine met her gaze, a sad understanding passing between them. Yes, sometimes they're not. They arrived at Prestige Motors at 8:30, entering through a private entrance to avoid being seen. Victor Thompson was waiting in his office with Agent Donovan and 2 other FBI agents. Everything is ready, Thompson informed them. The staff has been told there's an emergency meeting at 9 regarding security concerns. We've set up cameras to monitor everyone's reactions. Agent Donovan turned to Riley. We'll have you in the room, but positioned off to the side. Just Watch people's faces, body language, any unusual reactions. Don't worry about Patrick, we have agents specifically assigned to him. As 9 o'clock approached, Riley felt her heart rate accelerate. For someone who had spent years avoiding attention, being part of such a high-stakes confrontation was deeply uncomfortable. Yet there was also a strange exhilaration in using her skills for something important, something that mattered beyond her own survival. The meeting was held in the dealership's largest conference room. Approximately 30 staff members filed, including sales representatives, mechanics, administrative personnel, and management. Riley, positioned near the back corner with a clear view of everyone, spotted Patrick immediately. Catherine's brother was a slender man in his early 30s, with the same dark hair as his sister, but none of her warmth. His expression was a carefully maintained mask of professional interest. At precisely 9, Victor Thompson took his position at the front of the room. Beside him stood Agent Donovan, whose presence elicited murmurs of surprise and concern. "Thank you all for coming. On such short notice," Thompson began, his voice grave, "I'm afraid I have some disturbing news to share. As some of you may have noticed, we've had FBI agents on the premises yesterday and today. They're investigating a serious security breach at Prestige Motors." The room filled with whispers and uneasy glances. Riley observed each face, looking for signs of genuine shock versus feigned surprise. "Several vehicles belonging to high-profile clients have been tampered with," Thompson continued. "Surveillance devices and mechanical modifications designed to cause malfunctions have been discovered in at least 8 vehicles so far." Gasps and exclamations of shock rippled through the room. Patrick Reynolds maintained his composed expression, though Riley noticed a slight tightening around his eyes. "The FBI has been analyzing evidence from the modified vehicles," Thompson announced, "and they've made a breakthrough. Microscopic tool marks left on the components have been matched to a specific set of tools used here at Prestige." Now Riley could see real tension spreading across Patrick's features. His right hand, resting on the conference table, curled into a fist. "Based on this evidence and electronic records," Thompson continued, "we have identified the individual responsible. The FBI will be making an arrest later today." The room erupted in shocked conversations. Patrick remained silent, but his face had paled noticeably. Riley watched as he subtly reached for his phone, checked something on the screen, then returned it to his pocket. As Thompson called for calm, Riley slipped from her position and made her way to Agent Donovan, whispering in his ear. The agent nodded and discreetly dispatched one of his colleagues from the room. The meeting continued for another 20 minutes, with Thompson outlining enhanced security measures and answering carefully selected questions. Throughout, Patrick became increasingly agitated, checking his phone multiple times. When the meeting concluded, staff members filed out in groups, their conversations a mix of shock, speculation, and concern. Patrick attempted to leave with a cluster of finance department colleagues, but was intercepted by Agent Donovan. "Mr. Reynolds, could I have a word with you in private?" the agent requested smoothly. Patrick's expression flickered between fear and defiance before settling into forced politeness. "Of course, is there a problem?" "Just a few questions about access to the service record system," Donovan replied casually. "I understand you have administrative privileges." "Yes, for valuation purposes," Patrick confirmed, his voice steady, despite the tension evident in his posture. "Perfect, it shouldn't take long." As Donovan led Patrick toward Thompson's office, Riley followed Catherine to a separate room where monitors displayed feeds from the surveillance cameras placed throughout the dealership. Victor Thompson joined them moments later. "Your brother?" "Just sent a text message as he was leaving the conference room," Thompson informed Catherine, his tone gentle but firm. "Our technical team intercepted it. He was warning someone that we've identified the modifications and that they know." Catherine closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the painful confirmation of her brother's involvement. "Who was he texting?" "A burner phone, untraceable," Thompson replied. "But the FBI agent Riley alerted during the meeting followed your brother's line of sight when he checked his phone. He appeared to be looking at a message that had come in earlier, possibly instructions." Riley, who had been quietly Processing everything, spoke up. "Did you see what the message said?" "No," Thompson admitted, but whatever it was, it clearly agitated him. On the monitors, they could see Agent Donovan escorting Patrick into Thompson's office. 2 additional FBI agents were positioned outside the door. "What happens now?" Riley asked. "They'll question him," Thompson explained. "Try to get him to reveal who he's working with and why they're targeting these specific individuals." As they watched the silent feed from Thompson's office, a new alert appeared on one of the security monitors. A delivery truck had arrived at the service entrance. "Are we expecting a parts delivery?" Thompson asked, frowning. Before anyone could answer, the security feed from the service entrance cut to static. Simultaneously, alarms began blaring throughout the building. "Fire alarm," Thompson said, immediately reaching for his phone. "But there's no—" He was interrupted by an FBI agent bursting into the room. "Sir, we have an armed intruder at the service entrance. All personnel need to evacuate immediately." Catherine gripped Riley's arm. "Victor, Patrick is still in your office with Agent Donovan." Thompson's face hardened with determination. "Get Riley out of here, Catherine. Take the private exit to the parking garage. Agent, escort them, please." "What about you?" Catherine demanded. "I need to make sure everyone gets out safely," Thompson insisted, "including your brother." As the agent ushered them toward the exit, Riley looked back at the security monitors one last time. Through the chaos of evacuating, staff members and responding security personnel, she caught a glimpse of something on one of the screens, a familiar face among the confusion. It was Eddie Miller, moving not toward the exits with the other staff, but purposefully toward the underground garage where the most valuable vehicles were stored. The same garage where the black Jaguar F-Type with the dangerous modification was parked, scheduled for delivery today. "Wait," Riley called out, pulling against Catherine's grip. "Eddie Miller, he's heading to the garage." Catherine looked confused. "But you defended him yesterday. You said he wasn't involved." "He wasn't. At least not with the modifications," Riley realized, the pieces suddenly clicking into place. "But what if that's not all that's happening here?" Before Catherine or the FBI agent could stop her, Riley broke free and sprinted down the hallway toward the stairs leading to the underground garage. Behind her, she could hear Catherine calling her name, but Riley didn't slow down. Something bigger was unfolding, something beyond the surveillance devices and sabotaged vehicles. And somehow she knew that the answers awaited in the darkness of the garage below. The descent into the underground garage felt like entering another world. As the fire alarms continued to blare throughout the main building, the concrete stairwell muffled the chaos above, creating an eerie disconnect. Riley's footsteps echoed as she took the stairs 2 at a time, her mind racing faster than her feet. The king. Garage lighting had switched to emergency mode, dim red bulbs casting long shadows between the luxury vehicles. The air was cooler here, heavy with the scent of concrete, rubber, and the faint tang of motor oil. Riley slowed her pace as she reached the bottom of the stairs, crouching low and moving silently between cars, a skill honed from years of needing to remain unseen on Detroit streets. In the distance she could hear movement, the subtle sound of someone trying to be quiet, but unfamiliar with the art of true stealth. Following the noise, Riley navigated through rows of Bentleys, Maseratis, and Aston Martins until she spotted him, Eddie Miller, bent over the open hood of the matte black Jaguar F-Type. But he wasn't installing anything. He was removing the dangerous device Riley had discovered yesterday. Riley watched in confusion as Eddie carefully disconnected the component from the airbag system, his hands working with practiced precision. When he straightened and placed the device in his pocket, his expression wasn't one of malice or greed, it was fear. "You're not part of this, are you?" Riley said, stepping out from behind a Range Rover. "You're trying to stop it." Eddie spun around, his face draining of color when he saw her. "Jesus, kid, you scared the life out of me." His eyes darted nervously toward the exits. "You shouldn't be down here, it's not safe." "Neither should you," Riley countered, moving closer. "But you're not here to help whoever installed that device. You're removing it." Eddie's shoulders slumped slightly. "Look, there's no time to explain. More people are coming. You need to get out of here before—" The sound of the elevator doors opening cut him off. Both Riley and Eddie ducked behind the Jaguar as footsteps approached, multiple sets, moving with purpose. "Is the car ready?" a familiar voice asked. Patrick Reynolds. "Yes, sir," an unfamiliar voice responded. "Once Miller disables the tracking system, we'll move it to the loading dock. The truck is waiting. And Miller, once he's served his purpose, he won't be a problem." The cold calculation in the stranger's voice sent chills down Riley's spine. Eddie's face had gone ashen. "They kidnapped my daughter," he whispered to Riley, so softly she could barely hear him. "Said they'd hurt her if I didn't help them, but I couldn't let them go through with this, well, not when I realized what they were planning." Riley's mind raced. Eddie's unexpected arrival last night, his confusion about the text message. It hadn't been to frame him. It had been to get him to the dealership to prepare the Jaguar for whatever was happening now. "We need to get help," Riley whispered back. Eddie shook his head frantically. "No time, they have Jennifer. If they see police or FBI, they said they'd—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Riley made a split-second decision. "Where's your daughter?" "They said she's in a van in the back parking lot, but there are armed men guarding her." "How many?" "2, I think." Riley nodded. "Stay here. Keep them talking as long as you can. I'm going to find Catherine and Mr. Thompson." Before Eddie could protest, Riley slipped away, using the vehicles as cover. Instead of heading back to the stairwell, she moved toward a service door she'd noticed during her examination of the garage layout, an exit that would lead to the back parking area without passing through the main building. The door opened onto a narrow alley used for deliveries. Riley pressed herself against the wall, scanning her surroundings. About 50 yards away, she spotted a nondescript white van parked near the loading dock. 2 men in maintenance uniforms stood nearby, looking tense and out of place. Riley needed a distraction, but she also needed to alert Thompson and the FBI without endangering Eddie's daughter. An idea formed, risky but potentially effective. Staying in the shadows, she made her way to a row of employee vehicles parked along the side of the building. She selected an older model Ford pickup, the kind with simpler security systems that she'd learned to bypass during her years on the streets. Within minutes, she had the truck hot-wired and ready. Taking a deep breath, Riley put the truck in drive and pressed the accelerator, sending it rolling slowly toward the loading dock, with no one at the wheel. As it gained momentum, she sprinted back toward the main building's side entrance. The unmanned truck created exactly the distraction she'd hoped for. As it rolled toward the loading area, the men by the van shouted in alarm, drawing their weapons and focusing their attention on the unexpected threat. In the confusion, Riley slipped through the side entrance and raced back upstairs. She burst into the main showroom to find it now occupied by FBI agents in tactical gear. Agent Donovan was coordinating a response team with Thompson and Catherine nearby. "Riley!" Catherine cried, rushing toward her. "What were you thinking? It's dangerous." "Eddie Miller's daughter is being held hostage in a van at the loading dock," Riley interrupted breathlessly. "Patrick and some others are in the garage trying to steal the Jaguar with the modified airbag system. They're planning something big." Agent Donovan immediately raised his radio. "This is Donovan. We have a potential hostage situation at the rear loading dock. Proceed with caution, civilian minor involved." To Thompson, he added, "We intercepted Patrick trying to leave. He's in custody but refusing to talk." Riley's mind was working overtime, connecting pieces of information that had seemed disparate before. The cars that were modified, who were they all being delivered to? Thompson looked confused by the apparent non sequitur. Various clients. The senator, Judge Alvarez, Dr. Chen from Detroit Medical Center, and the music producer, Riley finished, whose car was scheduled for delivery today. Understanding dawned on Catherine's face. They're all attending the same event, the charity gala at the Detroit Institute of Arts tonight. That's it, Riley realized. They weren't just tracking these people or causing minor malfunctions. The modifications in the Jaguar were designed to cause a serious incident, maybe during the event, maybe on the way there. "But why?" Thompson asked. "What's the connection?" Before anyone could respond, Agent Donovan's radio crackled to life. "Sir, We've secured the van. One female minor recovered safely. 2 suspects in custody. Relief washed over Riley. Eddie's daughter was safe. And the Jaguar? Donovan asked into the radio. Still in the garage, sir. We have agents moving to secure it now. Riley felt a moment of triumph, but it was short-lived. A sudden explosion rocked the building, the sound coming from the direction of the underground garage. The floor beneath them trembled, and car alarms began wailing throughout the dealership. Report, Donovan shouted into his radio. Through the static, they could hear chaos and confusion. The Jaguar. Explosion. Fire spreading. Thompson's face went pale. The device Riley found, it must have been triggered remotely. But who would do that? Catherine asked, her voice shaking. Why destroy the car if the plan was compromised? To destroy evidence, Riley suggested. Or maybe... A terrible thought occurred to her. Maybe the Jaguar wasn't the real target at all. Maybe it was just a test run. Agent Donovan seemed to follow her reasoning. If there are other vehicles with similar modifications already delivered to other high-profile individuals, we need to warn them, Thompson said urgently. Every car that's been through our service department in the last 3 months needs to be recalled immediately. As the FBI mobilized to respond to this new threat, Riley found herself pulled aside by Catherine. Are you okay? She asked, genuine concern in her eyes. Riley nodded, though the events of the past 2 days had left her more shaken than she wanted to admit. I'm fine, but Eddie, is he? He's safe, Catherine assured her. They found him taking cover in the garage. He's with his daughter now. Riley felt a wave of relief. Despite barely knowing the mechanic, she had formed a connection with him, perhaps recognizing something of herself in his desperate attempt to protect someone he loved. In the hours that followed, the full scope of the conspiracy began to emerge. Patrick Reynolds, under intense questioning, finally revealed that he had been recruited by a sophisticated corporate espionage ring targeting technologies being developed by several of Detroit's elite. The modified vehicles were part of a complex scheme to gather intelligence and, if necessary, eliminate those who possessed valuable information about next-generation automotive innovations. The charity gala had been selected as the perfect opportunity, a single event where multiple targets would be gathered, arriving in vehicles that had all passed through Prestige Motors. Your brother claims he didn't know about the more dangerous modifications, Agent Donovan explained to Catherine. He thought he was just helping install surveillance equipment for corporate intelligence gathering. When he realized they were planning something more sinister, he tried to back out, but by then, he was in too deep. Catherine's expression was a complex mixture of relief, disappointment, and grief. He'll still face charges. Yes, Donovan confirmed, but his cooperation is helping us track down the organization behind this. We've already made arrests in 3 states. As the investigation expanded beyond Prestige Motors, Riley found herself in a strange limbo. The hotel room that had seemed so luxurious 2 days ago was now under FBI protection. Her brief taste of belonging with the Thompsons had been interrupted by the chaos of unfolding events. On the 3rd morning after the explosion, as Riley sat in the hotel room watching news reports about the foiled terror plot at Detroit's premier luxury car dealership, there was a knock at her door. FBI agents had been bringing her meals and updates, so she expected to see another anonymous suit when she opened it. Instead, Catherine and Victor Thompson stood in the hallway. May we come in? Catherine asked. Riley nodded, stepping aside to let them enter. Victor carried a large envelope and wore an expression that Riley couldn't quite read. The FBI tells us the immediate danger has passed, Catherine began. They've dismantled most of the operation behind the modified vehicles. Patrick is cooperating fully, as is Eddie Miller. What about Eddie's daughter? Riley asked. Jennifer is doing well, Victor assured her. Traumatized, certainly, but physically unharmed. Eddie has taken a leave of absence to focus on helping her recover. Riley nodded, relieved but uncertain why the Thompsons had come personally to deliver this news. Victor cleared his throat. Riley, what you did, your skill in identifying the modifications, your quick thinking with Eddie and his daughter, you saved lives. Many lives. I just did what made sense, Riley replied with a shrug. uncomfortable with the praise. "Well, what you did has certainly made an impression," Victor continued, "not just on us, but on some very influential people." He handed her the envelope. "These are some of the options we discussed earlier, about your future." Riley opened the envelope to find several official-looking documents. The first was an offer of permanent employment at Prestige Motors as an apprentice diagnostic specialist, with housing arrangements and educational opportunities included. The second was a letter from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services outlining a specialized guardianship arrangement that would provide Riley with stability while respecting her independence. "We meant what we said before," Catherine explained gently. "We want to help you build a future that makes use of your extraordinary gifts. No strings attached, no expectations beyond what you want for yourself." Riley stared at the documents, a lump forming in her throat. After years of surviving day to day, the concept of a future, a real future with support, education, purpose, was overwhelming. "Why?" she asked finally, looking up at them. "Why would you do this for me?" Victor and Catherine exchanged glances before Catherine answered. "Because talent like yours deserves the chance to flourish. Because the world needs more people who can see what others miss. And because," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "because sometimes the family you choose is as important as the one you're born into." 6 months later, on a crisp spring morning, Riley Jenkins stood in the newly renovated diagnostic center at Prestige Motors. The space had been designed specifically for her unique approach to vehicle assessment, combining cutting-edge technology with areas optimized for the auditory evaluation of engines that had become her trademark. At 16, she was now the youngest, certified diagnostic specialist in Michigan, with a growing reputation that brought vehicles with mysterious problems from across the country. The educational program designed for her combined traditional schooling with specialized technical training, allowing her to progress at her own accelerated pace. The small apartment above the dealership's classic car showroom had become her home, her first real home. Though technically under the guardianship of the Thompsons until she turned 18, the arrangement respected her need for independence while providing the structure and support she had never known. As Riley prepared to examine her first vehicle of the day, a rare Lamborghini with an elusive transmission issue that had stumped experts across 3 states, she reflected on how much had changed. The street-smart girl who had once hidden behind stacks of tires to learn about engines now had people coming to her for answers. "Morning, Riley," Phillips called as he entered the diagnostic center. The head mechanic, once skeptical of the scruffy girl who had embarrassed his team, was now one of her strongest advocates. "Ready for the Lambo challenge?" Riley nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. "Bring it in." As the exotic car was carefully positioned in her workspace, Riley noticed a young girl watching from the doorway, no more than 12, with wide eyes full of curiosity and wonder. One of the mechanic's daughters visiting the shop for the day. The girl's expression reminded Riley of herself not so long ago, pressing her face against the showroom, Tylas, dreaming of a world she thought she could never enter. "Would you like to listen?" Riley asked, gesturing the girl forward. The child's eyes widened further as she nodded, approaching cautiously. "What's your name?" Riley asked. "Melissa," the girl replied shyly. Riley handed her a stethoscope specially designed for engine diagnostics. "Here, when I start the engine, close your eyes and just listen. Tell me what you hear." As the Lamborghini's engine roared to life, Riley watched Melissa's face transform with concentration and then delight. It was the same expression Riley had worn countless times, the joy of connecting with something powerful and beautiful through sound alone. "It's like music," Melissa whispered, her eyes still closed. "But there's a wrong note somewhere." Riley smiled, recognizing the beginning of a gift similar to her own. "Exactly. Now let's find that wrong note together." As they bent over the engine, Riley felt a sense of completion, a circle closing. The girl who had once been invisible was now not only seen but sought after, and more importantly, she was helping others to be seen as well. In the symphony of engines that had guided her life, Riley had finally found her place, not just as a listener, but as a conductor, helping others hear the music she had always known was there. And as for the red Ferrari that had first captured her imagination on that fateful day, it now sat in a special display case in the Prestige Motors showroom, a symbol of the moment when everything changed, when a street kid with an extraordinary gift had found her way home. Outside the windows of the diagnostic center, Detroit continued its own rebirth, a city once defined by abandonment, now finding new purpose and possibility. Like Riley herself, the Motor City was discovering that sometimes the greatest strengths emerge from the harshest challenges, and that even in the most unexpected places, magic can be found by those who know how to listen.